So, good evening and welcome to this mystical Christmas night. My name is Carmen. I'm from the Aquarian team. I've been author and coordinator of the team for over a decade now. So, the reason why it's interesting to cover a mystical Christmas is because we're coming very close to the winter solstice. And there are 4 cardinal feasts that are very important because these feasts carry a big impetus of energy from the cosmos. They correspond to Christmas for the winter solstice. For the summer solstice, it's the Saint Jean-Baptiste, Saint John Baptist. And then we have Easter for the equinox and Michaelmas. At that time of the year, it is so organized into the cosmos that there is impulsion of energy coming to help mankind. And that's why the great initiates and the great masters use this kind of jet stream energy to deliver messages to humanity. And tonight, as we cover the mystical Christmas, we'll relate it in function of what is it from the historical point of view, what is it from the cosmic point of view, and from the mystical point of view. So, just as we receive energies from the sun, and we know because it gets warmer and it's brighter outside versus when it's cloudy and darker, and the sun is one fantastic influence for us on the planet, but at these 4 cosmic feasts, you can imagine the tremendous impetus that is given unto us. So from the historical point of view, we know that it represents the birth of Jesus. From the cosmic point of view, it represents the birth of the Christ consciousness. There's a difference between Jesus, the man, and Christ, the state that he reached and embodied when he was 33 years old. So that's a cosmic event. That means there's something happening in the cosmos that favors the manifestation of that Christ consciousness. And from the mystical point of view, it means that if we recognize the elements, if we work with the blueprint of what the Creator has done, then we have the same possibility to give birth to the Christ within, or what we also call our higher self. So when God created the universe, he said on the first day, he created the light. But it is not the light of the sun, because it's on the 4th day that he created the stars, the moon, and the sun. So what was that substance on the first day that he called light? Well, when you study esotericism or great masters, they tell you that it's like a substance that contains all the knowledge, all the power, and all the love you can imagine. It's that primary substance into which the seed of God deposited something and it became creation. And the Christ consciousness is that same idea, is that the sacred fire of God comes into the universal consciousness. The universal soul is like the womb into which that sacred fire comes in, and then it manifests as light, love, and power. How does that translate into the mystical part of us? Well, we talked about that blueprint, that how the universe was built is reflected on all levels of life. It's reflected through all the kingdoms, through our own psyche. So as we have the eternal feminine, the eternal masculine principle created as laws that belong to this high level of organization, we too have feminine, masculine through men and women, but also in our psyche as the corresponding elements. Same in nature, same in animals. Procreation is continued into the same blueprint, the same process. So in that, it's also this light, primordial light, in Bulgarian is called videlina, because it's not the same as the light of the sun, which is called Svitlina. Videlina is that primordial substance, and we bathe in it, we live in it, we have our existence. So we're going to leave that cosmic aspect for a moment, and also leave for a moment the mystical aspect, which relates to our psyche, our inner structure. We're going to talk back into the historical event and try to make the relations that is within that blueprint. So here we have the stable, but the stable represents the physical body. And then we have the manger into which the child is born. Well, that relates to the Hara center. So if you know about the chakra system, the Hara center, which is just below the navel, is where all the subconscious forces are contained. And once we've done some cleanup, then there's a tremendous power in that Hara center where we can deposit a divine seed in there. And just like mothers in gestation are provided by the universe with all the substances necessary to make a child be born or develop, the same that we have within us the power to deposit a seed into our consciousness or into our love, into our womb, and allow the manifestation of that higher self or the Christ self. The same thing happens on all levels. We're not separated from this. And then in the story of Jesus, they talk about the bull or the ox and the ass. Well, these also represent something within us. If you remember in the Egyptian mythology, they talk about Apis the bull, because he represented fertility, regeneration, and also the sexual force through the what we call the ass, which is represented by the personality, the sexual force. So both the regeneration of the Apis bull and the personality through the ass are elements that we need to control within ourselves, so they serve the purpose of bringing the breath to the child Jesus, which means if we know how to control these energies, they can serve us rather than be an obstacle to our development. And later on, Jesus is born, and then the star appears in the sky, and the three Magis come and travel from afar. That star in the sky represents the pentagram. The pentagram is like the way Leonardo da Vinci represented it, with the legs apart and the arms like this. It represents the 5 basic virtues of the Christ, or the perfect man. And that is love, wisdom, truth, justice, and kindness. So the 3 Magis, they saw that star that was at a very precise moment telling them, go to that specific place. There is a very important event taking place. And because they were astrologers, they knew what was happening. They knew what was the role of Jesus into humankind at that time. They brought gifts. And so the gift of gold, which is yellow, represents wisdom. And the gift of frankincense, which represents religion, and it represents the love aspect of things. And the last one brought the gold, the incense, the myrrh, thank you. And that represents immortality, the physical body. So again, you have that trinity on which we are based. We have the mind, we have the heart, and we have the will. the mind is related to wisdom, the heart to love, and the physical body to will, to action. So all the stories that have a history behind them, according to great teachers, are related to phenomena that we can rediscover on the mystical side of our place. So when we know how to use this polarity of the eternal feminine, the eternal masculine, and we know when to be receptive and when to be emissive, we can create the conditions to bring forward things that we want to see manifested. In this case, we want this higher consciousness. We want to create the condition for that super consciousness, that 100% of our potential, the Christ consciousness, which is also called the Buddhic consciousness, or it's also called the higher self. Now, the alchemist knew that. And have you ever heard of the Black Madonnas? And we have a picture here of the Black Madonnas. It is said that there are over 500 of them in the world. And over 300 are in France, mostly in the south of France. Now, when I went into Switzerland and went to Heisenheidel, if I pronounce it properly, I was told, oh, it's probably because there was a fire in the church or the candles burnt and created soot over Mary and the baby. But I knew that the alchemists represented the work they were doing with the philosopher's stone. In order to express their experience, they had to veil it into symbols. And the symbol of the Black Virgin is the prima materia. It's like the base material with which they started their alchemy. And that alchemy required to heat up that black earth. He heated up and heated up until it started changing color. And as it changed color, it became pure white. So the alchemy, which is not just a physical alchemy, because alchemists realized they could not succeed in their experience if they did not work on themselves at the same time. That meant purifying all the elements in them, all the blockages, all the patterns, so that their experience would reflect their own evolution. And those who have been able to obtain the Philosopher's Stone, well, they were in bliss. And so the Black Madonnas that are represented there, it's like our inner ground, our inner earth on which we need to base in order to cook the element and transform them until we obtain that higher consciousness. As human beings, we're maybe 5% developed. They say Einstein was at about 8%. That means that 95% of our potential is hidden. It's hidden, and the only way to access it is by our own consciousness and by making effort of working on ourselves. That means revisiting where we stand with our thoughts, with our feelings, and with our actions. So in the next slide, we will be showing that structure on which we are based. This comes from the Hindu system of the subtle bodies. So we have the will represented by the physical body. We have the heart that represents our astral body. And then we have the intellect that represents our mental body. That's our self where we operate every day. We operate within those notions, and we ignore or we don't know how to bring the higher aspects of us, which is like divine wisdom, divine love, and our atmic body, which is our all-powerful abilities. And the way to bring down these, they are there. They're connected with us, but they're so subtle because we have not nourished them. They need to come down into our, in theory, everyday life, so that we fuse our divine self with who we are here, our lower self, our personality, and that's our duty. Of course, it could take many reincarnations, and that's all right because we have eternity on our side. So the way to develop ourselves is to try to bring a balance between our heart, our mind, and our willpower. And so most of us, we either have a strong heart, we feel very emotional over things at the expense of the will or at the expense of the intellect, or we have an intellect very developed at the expense of the heart and at the expense of the willpower, or we're all willpower, which means we bulldoze through things and only reflect after and see the damage it's done. So the goal here is to rebalance ourselves so that we bring our love and our wisdom in a balanced way, so we stand on truth. When these two are in proper balance, then we have a solid foundation. So our actions reflect the balance of love and wisdom. Great teachers and great masters who have developed over eons of time have learned that self-control over themselves. They don't need any partners. They don't need any material goods. They have such a clear vision of leading humanity to a higher point that they're not interested in the material things. They really know that they are spirit and soul having an experience in a physical body, and not the opposite, not the physical body experiencing all kind of things in life. So our goal is to balance that Trinity within us. And when we desire that state of consciousness that represents the Christ consciousness, we create the condition by our own effort. That means in our inner work, we expand our feeling nature to try to embrace and be in that universal soul. In that universal soul, the substance is ready. Spirit is always thrusting forward. It's the male principle. It's always wanting to deliver ideas of creation, and it needs a receptacle, and that receptacle is like our soul. So on the cosmic level, we saw that spirit deposited a seed into the universal and the creation came about. Well, it's the same with us. We can use our divine fire. Let's say you have a tremendous eagerness to reach your full potential, and you take that idea and you bring it into your feeling nature and you sit with it. And nature will bring the materials to fulfill that, just like the seed of the Father within the mother's womb, she attracts the element. She doesn't have to say, I want 1 ounce of iron, I want 1 ounce of magnesium or this and that. Nature knows how to bring the elements that will fulfill the growth of the child. Oh, we see that in nature. A seed of tomato knows what to attract from space, the elements that are necessary to make it look like a tomato and taste like a tomato and have the properties of the tomato. It's all the blueprint. It's all the same thing. It's how we translate it into our life to embark on that energy, that blueprint that tells us how to do things. So that sacred fire that you have into perfecting yourself, into the space, that's the soul. The soul represents the space into which you put your desire, and by living a life that is reflecting what your desire is, which means that you eat pure food, you drink pure food, you choose pure colors, you choose nice music, so that you don't destroy your work as you go along. Since it's your goal to be into your full potential, into that perfection, because we carry that seed. We were made in the image and in the resemblance of God. The only thing is we don't have the resemblance. We have the image, it's all printed inside of us. We are that spark that came out into this idea of God. And therefore, we have to work on bringing that image forward. And substance is there to help us create it on the same pattern as the mother with the child. And once we have tasted that experience of the soul and the spirit visiting, and you've made the room and you prepared the condition, then light will always be there to chase darkness. And there will be such a feeling of warmth that you will never feel alone ever again. And it's also an abundance of life that comes with that consciousness, that Christ consciousness. And it's an extraordinary joy at feeling connected with the rest of the cosmos, that you're not separated from the cosmos anymore. And that presence will never leave you. So once great teachers have tasted this, it's like such a bliss. It's such an illumination. They're willing to sacrifice their samadhi up there, say, oh, we've got to go and help humanity. We've got to go and tell them how this is structured, how the system works, so that they can make their choice to move forward and go back within. So as we are into this winter solstice, and we have this tremendous energy pushing us into the direction of going within. That's what winter does. People stay more inside, and they rest more, and they read more, and it's a good opportunity to take that movement and put it to its advantage. And once we've triggered that process of nourishing the child within, it's also known as the second birth, then one day you can really say, I don't need to seek anymore, because the light is there. And I don't need to knock on any door, because all the doors will open. And I don't need to ask, because all my prayers are answered. You'll be living from a state of such intuition, of such connection with the cosmos, that it will be like the Third Testament. Don't ask, don't knock, don't seek. Everything will be there, because that higher self, lower self will be fused together, and the whole cosmos is supporting this, that this is our destiny. So, next slide. We are a spark of God. We came from the same origin as the one who created us. So we have that potential to develop our super consciousness, our Buddhic consciousness, our Christ consciousness. It's up to us to do the work, to do the research, to remind ourselves that we have a mission to accomplish, to develop ourselves. There you go. So if you have any question, it's a good time now. And then we'll have a meditation where we'll just hold the light. And with this light, we will ask the invisible world, the higher entities, to come and use our intention of light and spread it over humanity. So I will stop the recording so we can have the questions.